Okay, everybody, good morning. I want to call to order the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission for March 11th, 2024. And can we go ahead and do a roll call, please?
Sheila Snow, First District.
Lansing Duncan, Third District.
Rob Knight, Fourth District.
Keith Kaufman Gray, First District.
Ronald Nye, at large.
Randy Malcolm, Fifth District. Okay, and we have a quorum. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. This is a time that we ask for the public if they want to speak on any item that is not on today's agenda.
We have received no requests to speak, and we have received no speaker slips to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, let's move on to the minutes. We're going to be reviewing the minutes from February 12th, 2024. And again, I want to thank Commissioner Duncan for going over the original unapproved minutes that was sent out to him. He revised them. So what you're seeing is a first revisal of minutes and with all of his hard work. And so let's open it up for any corrections on the minutes for February 12th, 2024.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Milcom has a comment.
Sorry,
I will.
Go ahead, Commissioner Malcolm.
Your mic's off.
This one minor, it was bring to Union Hotel in California. It's actually a garage, California garage.
Then we should change it.
Okay.
Okay, then Randy, are you done then? Yeah.
Commissioner Duncan?
Yeah, and then a little note under roll call where it says Commissioners Bleacher. That the plural is correct because it's Commissioners Bleacher and Steinwex absent. However, let's put a parentheses after Steinwex and put arrived later, because that's what happened. And then, because she did arrive later, the action to adopt the minutes, it needs to be 7-0. She would have had to abstain anyway if she had been there. And then on page 2, just a little note under district reports. There's a bullet where Commissioner Nye is quoted, and then you start Commissioner Duncan and Commissioner Nye. Let's make that a separate bullet with a space. Other than that, Mr. Chair, I think they're good to go.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Duncan. Any other corrections?
Then I would move for adoptions of the minutes of February 12th, 2024 as amended.
Okay, we have a move. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Snow, seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, staff update. The Planning Development HLAC staff will provide a brief oral announcement on reports or report on items of general interest to the commission. Do we have any staff updates today?
Yes, just one. And during COVID, during 2020, there was an archiving project that we were working on to update the public historical places of merit and historic landmarks to update the resolutions and cover pages. We're still in the process of tracking down the USB drive that was provided to staff at the time. And me and Lansing have been working on that back and forth.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other staff reports? That was it? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're moving right along here. Okay, let's move to item number 5, project discussion. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission will discuss funding potential historic projects, supplemental letters, information received, etc. This is usually when, as the chair, I give you updates on what's been going on in addition to projects. So I have a list of some things here real quick. This is just more Housekeeping, mileage forms, third quarter ends this month, so be sure to get your mileage in from January through March into Jonathan so that we can process that. Remember, we need to do that every quarter. And so that will be the January through March 2024 is going to be due after today's meeting, unless you have a site visit planned later in the month. Second reminder, statement of economic interest form, the 700. Maybe everyone's done it, but I'm just reminding everyone that that's due coming up. And then also a reminder of the ethics training. This is due every 2 years. A couple of months ago, everyone got a letter from David Villalobos about if you did it last year, you don't have to do it this year. I think a lot of us, though, did it 2 years ago, so we might be up to have to do that. But just a reminder that that needs to be in. Update on 2929 East Valley Road. This is a Carlton Winslow house. This is the item that we looked at for potential landmark at last month's meeting. And I've been working on the nomination and it's not ready yet. So just say that it's in progress. We're still working on that. So I haven't forgotten about it. Another item, 170 Middle Road. This is the Moody Sisters landmark demolition. Just to let everyone know, there's no update on what's going on with that unless County Council has anything new. Okay, she's shaking her head. So anyway, I just want to keep you informed that's still, out there. The next one is the 135 Los Alamos Connected Community Project. This is something that I brought up last month, and I'd received a letter about a week before last month's meeting, and it's about a bicycle project, bicycle lane, curb ramps, improvement from Highway 101 into downtown Los Alamos. And after looking at the map closely, I think Commissioner Duncan is the one that pointed it out. There is a proposed curb ramp in front of our historic landmark number 39. And I had a picture taken from a good friend. She let me use her picture. Dill Dexter. This is in front of the Union Hotel. This is our landmark in Los Alamos. There's actually three properties on this landmark, number 39, and the Union Hotel is one of the three properties. And I just wanted to show you, they're planning, the very initial plan is to put a curb ramp in front of the hotel. So what I did is everyone should have a copy of the letter that I sent to the consulting people, JRP Historical Consulting. And I basically said that, you're planning a potential ramp in front of a historic landmark. The Historic Landmarks Commission has purview over historic landmarks. So when it comes time to further study of this, they'll need to come to us, Caltrans, with a more complete plan of what they plan to do. The response I got just this week was, it's the very initial stages. As you know, Caltrans, they plan things years in advance. So this is just the very initial stage. But they know now that they definitely are going to need to come to us when they get to the point of actually getting the project together. So I just want to give you an update, and you can see that there is steps in front of it. It's the old-fashioned wooden boardwalk, sidewalk, however you want to call it. So that's that. But I thought it'd be nice I had a picture to show everybody what it actually looks like with the steps there. Okay, so that's for the Los Alamos Connected Project. Okay, I'll move on to the Landmark Subcommittee. In your packet, the first packet you received, you got some interesting documents for Cold Springs Bridge, and there also was some documents for the Arroyo Hondo Bridge. The Landmark Subcommittee was thinking of planning to bring for discussion as a potential landmark the Cold Springs Canyon Bridge. And that is why all of that information from Caltrans was in your packet. Well, after discussion with County Council, they're looking into it to see if we have purview over making a state-owned bridge into a county landmark. So instead of having that discussion before we know the answer, we decided to hold off on that. So don't throw away those, the documents that you received. We might be still revisiting that down the future, but that's the reason why those were in your packet. And if you read it closely, they do say why they're eligible for historic landmark status in those documents. Also for the Subcommittee on Historic Landmarks, Last time I'd mentioned, if anyone has, any commissioners have any ideas for potential landmarks, I just want to let the commissioners know that Commissioner Knight emailed 2 potential sites to the subcommittee. They're in North County. One is the Nancy Kelsey Grave site near Cuyama, and the Juan Pacifico Ontiveros Adobe near, is it Garvey? Garvey, okay. Gary, okay, is it, okay. Anyway, so those are 2 that he sent for us to look into. So again, if you can think of anything in your district that the subcommittee can look at, we can always bring it up for discussion at a later date. So that is my kind of chair project discussions. Is there any other project discussions from staff that I need to at this time? Nope, okay,
None from staff.
okay.
I can add a note about ongoing
Okay,
effort. A member of the community contacted us about the potential designation of some buildings out at the Lake Kachuma campground. And Commissioner Duncan described these as well as I did last month. So I've continued to do some research on that, and I've made contact with the original person who had contacted our commission. And I found out that there is a very complete survey of all the buildings of the ranch that was there before the dam was built. And that is in a volume which is in the Santa Ynez Historical Museum, and they are desperately trying to find it. So, but it should make a basis of some interesting research and lift this project further. But there's some potential that there are enough buildings. We might consider it as a district and not just 1 or 2 buildings. So a lot more needs to be done, but there's potential there.
thank you very much, Commissioner Knight. Thanks for following up on that. Okay, any other project discussions? Okay, well, let's move on to the budget. Item number 6. Everyone should receive our current budget. That was through the end of February 29, 2024. We actually are looking better than we have in many years as far as our budget goes. As usual, our staff support is going to be way over just because, as we mentioned before, the budget has not increased for many, many years, and salaries and stuff have gone up and our budget has not. So that is always a big problem, but we're only, we're at 48% as the end of February, and we have 3 more months to go. So, if we want to use some of our professional services budget, now might be the time to discuss, updating our website further, what we might want to do going forward. I'd just like to open this up for discussion, but right now we're looking at the budget and if there's any questions on the budget. No questions on the budget? Okay, and thank you, Jonathan, for getting it to us. I mean, I know it's been hard sometimes to get updated figures. I guess the best way to do this is if anyone has any idea what projects we should do, email me. We can put on the agenda for discussion at next month's meeting. That would be the best way to do this because it's not agendized, so we can't discuss it today. Okay, thank you very much. No more questions on the budget? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to district reports. This is the time that if there's any subcommittees or any commissioners in their district have any reports of what's going on in their district, now's the time to go ahead and make your piece. I know Commissioner and I just basically said what he was going to do during district reports. Nothing? No? Okay. Okay, well, we'll move on. That was fast. Okay. We're zipping along here. Okay. So let's go move on to our standard agenda. Okay, this agenda item, I'll go ahead and read it as normal, and then, so the standard agenda item is item number 8. This is the Scriberg exterior alterations. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, HLAC, will review, discuss, and provide comments on a request for a land use permit to abate a zoning violation for unpermitted exterior changes to an 831 square foot Moody Sisters cottage, including raising the northeastern portion of the roof by 3.5 inches, raising a portion of the eastern roof by 1 foot 5 inches, and installing new doors, windows, and siding. Replacement windows match the appearance of the house's historic window types with regard to the type and appearance of glazing bars. Replacement board and batten siding will be installed to match the original material and appearance throughout the exterior, including the water heater door. The existing 532 square foot carport utility room includes as-built exterior paint and material changes as well. The proposed roof material of the residence will be a presidential shake charcoal black asphalt shingles. No grading or tree removal is proposed. The maximum height of the residence is 13 feet. The parcel is served by the Montecito Water District, the Montecito Sanitary District, and the Montecito Fire Protection District. Access is provided from Periwinkle Lane. The property is 0.17 acre parcel, zone 20-R-1, and shown as assessors parcel number 011-220-003, located at 539 Periwinkle Lane in the Montecito Community Plan area. This is in the first supervisorial district. So we have both. I thought what I'd do is go over how we're going to conduct this meeting today, because it is a little more complicated than our normal just listening to an applicant. So what I plan to do is what I just did. I read the agenda item. We'll go over any ex parte conversations for commissioners. Then I'll ask the planner, Katie Knowles, is she online? Is she here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. She is on the phone.
Okay, great. So we'll have her do kind of a background of this, the history of the project that we're looking at today. Then I'll ask commissioners if they have any questions to staff about the report. Then we'll have a presentation by the applicant, as we normally will do. And then I'll ask commissioners if they have any questions to the applicant, After we have the quick questions to the applicant, then we're going to go to public comment. And this is where the neighbors can do their presentation. We do have a presentation planned. And then there'll be public comment besides just that, and anyone that wants a public comment at that time. And then questions by commissioners to public comment speakers. So that's their time to ask the questions to the public comment speakers. We'll allow that after all the speakers speak. And then also allow the applicant's response and rebuttal to the public comment speakers. And then we'll go back with remaining questions for applicants or staff. And then, of course, our normal commissioner comments at the end. Again, we're doing comments on this project that will go forward to Montecito Planning Commission, I believe. And so I just wanted to kind of go over it. So there's many opportunities for commissioners, but just kind of keep your questions for the right time during the meeting today. So first of all, let's start with the ex parte. Has any commissioners had any ex parte conversations with any of the applicants or the neighbors? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, yes, I had a Zoom call with Mark Chatillo and Bill Babbitt.
Okay. Any other conversations? Commissioner Witosh.
I also had a Zoom meeting with Mark Chatillo and a conversation with Bill Babbitt.
Okay.
It's the neighbor.
And I have had telephone and email communications with Mr. Babbitt scattered over several weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll just say that I received, I saw the email that Commissioner Nye received from Bill Babbitt. And also on Friday, Mr. Chatillo called me and we had a conversation on Friday, March 8th. So any other commissioners? Okay, so that's all the ex partes. So let's move on to, we'll go to the planner and do the presentation of this project. And as we have Katie now.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Katie's on the phone, so I'm just going to give you a brief update on where we're at. Kind of mid last year, you guys had reviewed the project, very similar to what you're looking at here today. I think the only thing that's changed between then and now is the paint color. And originally you had reviewed the project with a metal roof and kind of a brighter white paint color. And today the project is back before you with a little bit darker paint color. In the meantime, subsequent to your review and comments, staff had approved the land use permit for the project. The land use permit was then appealed by Mr. Babbitt to the Planning Commission. And then the project was heard by the Montecito Planning Commission last month, who directed us to come before you here today to gain your comments to inform their decision-making. And the plan then would be to gather up your comments here today and return to the Planning Commission later this month. So that's the general status update.
Go ahead. Question.
Could you identify yourself?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Briggs. I'm Katie's supervisor.
Also, I guess one of the biggest questions is the roof. Given the fact that that has been previously approved, how does that figure into our proceedings today?
Yeah, Commissioner Nye, through the chair, good question. So prior to entering the land use permit process, the applicant had received a building permit to replace the roof. And that roofing material is the metal roof. And so that's what's existing out there today. The project was approved by staff with a metal roof. I understand that when your commission reviewed the project, some of your members did not like the metal roof and had preferred something more in the Moody Sisters theme. And so as we approached the Planning Commission, the applicant had voluntarily decided to change the roofing material to a shingle roof to conform to your input and input by the Montecito BAR, who had very similar comments to you guys. So we went to the Planning Commission with the shingle roof. The Planning Commission was unable to take action during the first hearing. They felt like they needed input from the HLAC. And subsequent to that meeting, the applicant has changed back to the metal roof. So what we're reviewing today is the metal roof. And that's kind of the history of how things have changed back and forth. But you are correct. The metal roof is permitted and existing.
And I guess it's important to point out that this property is not designated landmark or place of historic merit. So we're relegated to comments, only review and comments here. The roof situation, I guess it is to be reviewed along with all of the other proposed parts of or maybe not.
So
You'd like to know what you expect from us. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. So Mr. Chair and Commissioner Nye. So the project obviously before you was the metal roof. And you guys have already seen it. You've already commented on it. I would expect you to say similar things today that you had said last year. Because the Planning Commission has asked us to come and seek your input before we go back, we would really like to take back comments about the roof. And if you prefer the shingles, we would like to know that. And so, we're looking forward to your discussion so we can package that up and bring it back to the Planning Commission for their decision.
Mr. Chair.
Duncan, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, sticking to the roof for now. Part of your discussion was the fact that the roof was changed with a permit. However, the appellants argue that what was presented to staff was not accurate in terms of the roof color or the roof type. The application or what was told to the staff was like for like and color for color. And if that turns out not to be the case, what does the county do?
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Duncan, there is no misrepresenting the roof. The roof is there.
Yeah.
We know what color it is. We know how high it is. There's no questions to be asked.
Yeah.
The roof is the roof.
But I mean, the original request for a roofing permit
Mhm.
had these specifications in the application. And
Yes.
if those were not accurate, does that affect the permitting status of the roof?
So when you look at the roofing permit, imagine that building and safety approves a couple thousand of these roofing permits every year. The roofing permit, if you look at the language that's stated on the permit, it says metal roof. It doesn't say seam on the roof. And so I think the appellants are taking exception with the exact language that's stated on the building permit. I mean, this is a permit that's done over the counter in a matter of minutes by a permit tech. It's not reviewed in detail by the BAR and folks in the land use division. So, it's an over-the-counter permit, and we can parse the language however we'd like. The fact is that the applicant received a building permit to re-roof the structure, and it does say a black metal roof.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to see a copy of that application in which those words are on the application, metal roof. I actually have seen the application, and I do not recall seeing metal roof. I see it says roof to match existing. So that was the existing at the time those statements were made about metal roof. The existing roof was not a metal roof. I just would like, I don't want to argue about it. I just want to see the application up on the screen. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair and members of the commission, this is Katie Nall. I'm the planner. To clarify that statement, the application did specify a standing metal seam roof, and it clarified that the color would remain the same. So the same as the previously existing asphalt shingles. The color would be the same, however, the materials would be metal.
That was incomprehensible. I'm sorry, maybe Jonathan can help with the audio. I believe that a copy of that permit was included in one of the post-Hazeltine reports, but it's very hard to read. I mean, I assume that's what it is.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Katie is clarifying what she was trying to say on the phone, and she says that the application for the building permit for the roof, it states that it's a metal roof and the color is to remain the same.
Okay, any other questions here? We're still at questions to the planner right now.
Can we look at that again, please?
There it is.
So I see the words to match existing dark asphalt shingles, color to match. So the question is the phrase to match existing refer to the installation of flat, what does that say? Flat panels? No, what is it? No, no striations, color to match existing black asphalt shingles. Okay, little difficult to make out. Thank you for that.
Okay, you'll have to wait until you have your presentation, because this is now just commissioners' questions. Any other commissioner questions for the planner? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on to presentation by the applicant.
Would you mean the appellant?
No, applicant.
Is it an applicant? Okay.
It's the applicant.
Are we on? Good. I'm Tim Hazeltine from Post Hazeltine Associates. Dr. Post is behind me, and she'll get up and speak if need be. The first thing I wanted to do is really quickly go over a few things. At the Planning Commission meeting, there were some statements made that were not accurate about what was in our report. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I wanted to clarify that we did include our evaluation of certain things. One is that on page 26 of our report, we did speak to actually 25 and 26 under integrity of design. We did note that the permitted metal roof did not enhance integrity. Instead, because it was a permitted alteration, we had to reach a conclusion of whether that change was so invasive that the building would no longer be eligible because it had changed too much. I mean, the general protocol that we have used for the last 26 years, and others do too, is permitted changes are evaluated to see if they detracted or enhanced integrity. And that's what we accomplished that goal in our report. We stated it was not a preferable change, but it didn't change the building so much that it wouldn't be eligible. If it wasn't eligible for listing, then the report would have been a phase 1 report with no evaluation of project impacts because there would not be a significant historic resource that required review. On page 33 of our report, under section 6.2, project description, we did evaluate the as-built changes, noted the recently permitted roof change. So the report did evaluate those changes. It was our conclusion that raising the plate height where they inserted the door, and of course I should back up and say as-built means they made the change without a full permit covering those types of alterations. So we were acknowledging that. So the as-built refers to alterations that were not under the roof permit and did not have a permit of their own. So we then looked at the two major changes that were made as built. One was raising the plate height, as I said, I think approximately 17 inches, I believe. I mean, of course, I'd like to note that that figure has varied from the architect several times to us. At one point, it was 13 inches, and then it went up to 17 when I believe they remeasured. Any change to a historic building, not any, but most changes are not always ideal. But in our estimation, altering that plate height on the side elevation of the house did not change the building to the degree that it would no longer be eligible. And we also noted that even though on an elevation sketch, which let me see if I can find what page that's on. That's page 37. There's an elevation under figure 22 and figure 21 and 22. So figure 21 is existing. I'd like to note that these drawings are the drawing set that we had in 2021 with some later revisions. So our point here is that it does show up on the elevation drawing, I think under figure 22, and it does look somewhat noticeable, but it's been our experience that when you look at a building in 3 dimensions, rather than an elevation drawing, which brings all the planes of the building up forward to one plane, it was our estimation that from standing in the street on Periwinkle, we didn't believe that seeing a little bit of that top part was going to impair the resource to the point that it would not be eligible, or that its ability to convey the remaining elements of its original design would be so impaired that the building would not be eligible. And then there were a couple of other changes. We not approved, but as we say, we supported adding an additional door for fire egress because of its location on a part of the building that had been added on to and altered, because the building actually did undergo 2 remodeling events, I think in the 70s. And they added those additions where they have those unusual sort of canted single light windows, which are obviously a design aesthetic that actually reflects the 1970s rather than the Moody Sisters' original design.
Could you indicate which door you're speaking, which elevation you're talking about?
Sorry that the architect's not here, and doing our best.
Okay.
Given we're not architects. Thankfully, I should say. It's on the right, yeah. So yeah, if you look on the upper drawing, I believe, yeah, you can see it on the right-hand side.
That door dates back quite a few years.
Actually, that is an addition. I mean,
Right.
It's been modified so much, it reads
Yeah.
as an addition. As you can see, the window next to it, a 2-part sort of tract house
Yes,
window.
yes.
That's one of the replacement windows.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could go into great detail, but our findings now would be the same as they were. The metal roof is not ideal. But the general protocol is if changes have been made under permits, then we evaluate whether those changes were deleterious to the resource to the point it wouldn't be eligible. Because if we took this to its logical endpoint, then the additions that were made in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, should also come off, because that was not part of the Moody Sister plan. But in historic preservation, we essentially have to deal with structures as they are, with the caveat that if changes have been made without permits, that those are changes that we can come in and say, that wasn't permitted, you need to return that to a closer approximation or to what it was before. So in this case, that is why we didn't, in a sense, belabor the metal seam roof. I mean, either the building would be eligible or it would not be eligible. But we could not, in our report, ask them to remove a permitted change. And we have not done that in the past, unless we have received direction from a public agency that is something that they would like to see on a particular project, and it's quite unusual. So in summary, using the best available information that we had in 2021, the report evaluated the property, determined whether it was eligible or not, made a finding that it was eligible at the merit level because it had had so many alterations previously that were permitted. And then we evaluated the project, and it was our conclusion that these three changes, which was more than 3, but they're generally adding a door, adding 2 doors, removing 1 original window, and then replacing some of the non-historic single light windows with multi-light rectangular windows that are somewhat closer, or that are closer to the original window type as best as we understand. We didn't really evaluate paint color, but I will say that on many projects, that's not always the case that we would do that. But we support the applicant's desire to change the paint color to something that's more closer probably to what might have been there at the time. at least in the hue of the color or the intensity of the color. As far as them not bringing back, but deciding to keep the metal roof, that wouldn't change the conclusions of our report because, as I've just noted, it's a permitted change. We would just simply have to make that determination whether the structure was eligible with that change or whether it was not. So I think that concludes our presentation.
Okay.
This would be the
Request.
time, if there's any other applicants that want to speak, go right ahead. This would be your time to speak.
Hi, I'm Lisa Seibert. If you could put that back up. Great, thank you. So we bought this house in 2020. 2 weeks after we closed escrow, our insurance company told us they were canceling us if we did not put on a new roof. We had no intentions of immediately putting on a roof, but we did so we wouldn't be canceled by our insurance. One note I want to say, this whole thing about shingles, if you guys are historians, Moody Sisters originally had red tile roofs. I don't even know who or where shingles came up, but they had red tile roofs. So just saying that. Our roof, we went to the fire department and talked about egress at that time. The gentleman who came out told us that we needed a door to get out of this house, a Moody Sister house. So we raised the plate height in the backyard for a French door to be able to get out of our house. And so we did that, which was wrong apparently during the roof thing, because why are you going to get a roof permit and then redo it again? So we raised the plate height to get out. I have correspondence with the fire department from that. We went and this was, first of all, our neighbor is Mo McQuitty, who I went to visit many times. Her grandfather is the McQuitty that built all the Moody Sisters. I have the 6 addresses of the actual Moody Sisters on Periwinkle, and ours is not a Moody Sister home. It was the gardening shed, supposedly studio, for 559, which is Mo McQuitty's house. Her house burnt down in the 80s, and her mom died in the house due to a fire. Mo McQuitty is 88 years old. She's lived on our street since she's 11. She told me my house looks sharp. She likes it. She said, I don't actually want to say what she said to tell you guys at the historic board. She's like, how many more people need to die in a Moody Sister if it is not have egress or safe? Her mom, again, died in that house. She rebuilt it in '89. The fire department has come out again last week. I had Alex out there. He said, you could not put on a safer roof than your metal roof. I don't understand why your neighbor doesn't like it. He should be happy you are safe. I'm now living with a underage child who we have no way out. We don't have egress. I've told numerous times to the planning commission that they're all on alert. If my house burns down and we die in it, this has been going on 4 years. I'm changing 1970 windows. This was a Moody Sister little, apparently storage garden shed, says artist or studio somewhere on the plans. In 1974 is the first record of a toilet in this structure when it was added on to become a residence. This is not even a 50-year-old home. It wasn't a home before 74. It was a gardening artist studio. There was a Moody Sister carport that got torn down in 74. I'm sorry, my neighbor doesn't like my roof. I tried at the last meeting to give him a $45,000 gift of a new roof. And then he came back, said he didn't like my paint color, didn't like my window color. I can't do this anymore. I want my house safe. And that's it. I don't, this is not a Moody sister home. In 1974, it became a home. That entire side over here on the left was added. That's where the 3-inch knock-up is in the 1970 laundry room that was put in. This side over here was the bedroom that was added to make it a home in 1974. The 6 Moody sister addresses that were built on this street are 537, which is Mr. Babbitt's, 556, 559, 540, 555, and 539. I mean, sorry, 553 is the last one. 539, my house was never built as a Moody sister home. It was the gardening shed, studio, whatever you want to call it, with a carport for 559, Mo McQuitty's house that burnt to the ground. I like my roof. I feel like it's safe. I just want to get rid of the 1970 windows. That's all we're doing. And putting back in to match the Moody sister one that's in the front elevation. There's one on the side. That's all we were doing. And I needed a door to get out for egress. So we put French doors in where the plate got raised up for a dormer to get out. That's it. I've been living like this for 4 years. Anything you can do to help me. I've tried to deal with the neighbor. It didn't make him happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more applicants would like to speak? Please state your name too.
So I'm Richard Seibert, and I think Lisa has expressed to you, that's my wife, Lisa, she's expressed to you the years that we've been at this. This is 4 years, and this is the second time that we came back to you. Our original meeting was September 2021 that we were in front of the board before. I'll keep my comments brief. Primarily, we're putting in 5 windows and 1 pair of French doors. That's all we're trying to get approved at this point, but we keep going back with these different appeals, and the process is very difficult on our family, and the whole process is very frustrating. But I did want to clarify and differentiate the permit that was obviously going to be scrutinized. So the permit calls for a flat metal roof. So when you consider striations, when you're in the roofing industry, there's a standing seam metal roof. And oftentimes those roofs, they oil can. In other words, they kind of buckle and wave. In a way that people sometimes do roofs is they have striations that run in between the standing seams. So when you use the word striations, it's referring to the space between the standing seams. So ours is a standing seam, black metal roof. We had a black asphalt shingle roof prior. That's like for like. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's open this up for any questions for the applicants from commissioners. Commissioner Nye?
I have a request. And not to overburden you, but could Mr. Hazeltine come back and walk the commission through the changes on the various elevations? In your report, you had some nice illustrations of before and after drawings. And because at the moment, this is such an unusually shaped structure, and there have been certain additions and changes. And it's almost impossible to keep all the windows and door changes in mind without seeing something graphic. For example, the one that's up there now, if you could work off of something like that, that would really help us
Yes,
to understand what's being proposed. Thank you.
of course, Commissioner. I think then we'll start with,
Mr. Chair, can I piggyback on that a little bit too? And Mr. Hazelton, if you could point out where what you're recommending be approved, matches something different from what has actually been done. For instance, I'm looking at this, and this shows an elevation which we were originally shown, and it showed that the asymmetrical window that's to the left of the really big studio window that's on this elevation was going to be replaced with a bit more traditional window. But then I actually look at the pictures of what happened, and those appeared to be with the White House and the black, but that isn't replaced. It just becomes almost bigger or something like that, but it's still this same asymmetrical window.
oh, would you like me to respond now or? Yes.
No, that's
Okay,
fine. You know, the other
two sets, so.
Yeah, they're both saying the same thing, and I just want to piggyback. I had requested the applicant for some before and after pictures, and I believe some of them were put in.
Yeah, yeah, I can respond to that, I think.
Sometimes if we actually see what it looks like now, and I know there were some pictures in
I
our,
don't have recent pictures within the last couple of months. But I will point out that some of the changes that have been proposed have not been implemented and others have. So changing out the windows on the north elevation, the existing asymmetrical, well, actually removing one. So if you look at, I think it's figures 21 and 22. If we look to the right-hand side of the drawing, you can see a two-part window, a sort of vertical with an asymmetrical top, let's put it that way. And it is flanked by a door. Now that whole thing there, as Ms. Skybird noted, is mostly, as far as we can understand, based on the available records. And so I should back up and talk about that just for a moment. When we prepared the report in 2021, we contacted archives and repositories of historic records. We're in Santa Barbara County. Those included the Architecture and Design Collection at UCSB, the AIA Archive for Santa Barbara County, files on plan at the County of Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara Historical Museum, and the Montecito History Committee. So we did look for older photographs or perhaps this old plan set, and we were not able to find one. And we also went online and checked to see if any repositories outside of Santa Barbara County had a public archive or something accessible where we could look at drawings and such, and we could not find one. So I just wanted to add that because there is, at this point, the changes are not always well documented. Permits in the 70s didn't require often the level of detail they do now. But to back up on this part here, to get back to this, so that two-part window on the right-hand side, that is one proposed just to be removed, and then that would be reclad in board and bat to match the siding of the original studio building.
Could we see
Yeah,
before and after on the same screen?
Well, yeah, they're both on there. And actually, before and after is not terribly
Yes.
accurate because, as I noted, some of these changes were the proposed changes that weren't implemented before the county, before the whole process kind of got started in a way. So some have been completed, or at least started. One, I think, is the double door, opening for the double door and raising the plate height over that to accommodate a door or a paired door.
Well, let's go one elevation at a time.
Okay.
So existing shows a vertical two-part window on the right-hand side of the front door. Now, what's happened with that?
Well, I believe it is still there. That's a change.
So the windows,
Yeah.
okay, so
So
that's as is, and then what's the proposal?
proposal is to take the window out, which is non-contributing, and replace it with board and bat.
Board and bat, okay. That helps a lot, thank you.
Sorry, I know it's a little confusing actually when you look at this, because it's easy to assume that all these changes have been made when they have not. And then the
And,
next.
and now you're of the opinion that that window, as far as you could tell, is not original.
That's it's our understanding that all of that was the 1970, early 70s edition.
This is the right.
And that's based on reviewing available plans and information permits on the property. And if we look at the same sheet, and look on the left-hand side of the large multi-light window, the rectangular one at the center of the elevation, there's another asymmetrical one-light window. That's proposed for removal and replacement with it'll essentially look like two paired 4-light windows. That change also has not been made yet, but it was proposed and we thought that was,
And is that window original?
no.
Okay.
All the asymmetrical windows on the house are not original to the Moody Sisters design, to the best of our understanding, based on the information that was available to us. And then it's a little hard to see because I've got the tree kind of detail here, overlay, but on the far left-hand side, there's a proposal to add a smaller 4-light window whose design is based on the Moody Sister. Sort of the typical window for this building. We felt that was supportable, that little, it's hard to know what to call that, a tiny wing. It almost looks like a little tail in a way, but it had laundry facilities and other things in there. The history of that little addition is somewhat unclear, but it appears to mostly or all be an addition. And as I said, the window type they're proposing is appropriate. And part of the reason that's appropriate is for these additions that were added and the areas have been highly altered in the past, using a window type that emulates the historic window type of the house will allow the facade to read better and not look now. It sort of visually looks like a little jumble of different architectural types, like single light windows, multi-light windows. So this will make this elevation more cohesive, which we believe would be beneficial. Go to the next page.
Can we stay on this elevation for a second? So on the left-hand side of the main block of the house, which I guess is this laundry area, the roof has also been popped up.
Yeah, and that's what apologies, Commissioner Lansing. Commissioner Duncan, sorry. I mentioned that earlier and I didn't bring it up again, but yes, that's the sort of pop-up that I had mentioned earlier that they had actually installed that when they were doing the roof in order to put a door underneath. And I believe that's the door, that's the door that Ms. Skybird referenced as a second egress door for the house.
Your client seems to think maybe something different.
Yeah, I think I'm talking about this one up here. I think you're talking about this one here, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's the little.
that
yeah,
was because that window's egress.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's right.
Yeah.
That is
So
egress.
that's
Yeah.
the-
Anyways,
So did you analyze that change in the roof line or not?
yes,
You did.
it's in the report. We said the change was not so invasive that the house would not be eligible. And the primary reason for that is when looking at this, as I noted or mentioned before, we stood out on the street and then looked back at the house, and we don't believe that too much of this will be visible. There'll be a little bit of visible, but it's one of those instances when you look at an elevation drawing, it sometimes is a little, it's not deceiving, but as you know, because you work in the field, it brings everything up to one plane. So even if you have an addition that's farther back, on an elevation sheet, it's going to look like it's right up against all in one plane.
So Jonathan, could we keep the two images at once? Yeah, it helps.
Yeah. So
Mr. Hazeltine, I apologize for interrupting you. I didn't realize that this was the other raised portion, so my mistake. Yeah.
apology is not needed. It's an interesting little house with lots of little extensions. If we can go to the next sheet, it's figures 23 and 24. As you can see, there's the existing and then the proposed. In this case, you'll see that they want to add a window in the peak of the gable roof. This is the back of the house. That's one change. You can see that in the upper portion. You can see there's no window, and down below there's a window, and it will have, board and batten siding there to match existing. The other change is actually something that's a little difficult to see because of the vegetation they put here, but they want to change an existing window in the laundry area. And it's now, I think, a 6-light door. I'm sorry, a 6-light window. I should say a window, pardon. It's a door with a 6-light window in it. They want to change that to a 4-light window. It's from what we could tell from the records that we had available to us, that area has been modified in the past. And because this is on the back of the building, we felt that that change was supportable. At the far end of the elevation, they're going to, there's a utility closet, and they're going to put a new door on it. And it is our understanding that door will be clad in board and bat with sufficient ventilation. They have to provide some ventilation in the door because of what's behind it. But that's a very minor change. And also that's not an original feature on that end of the elevation. So that alteration is not going to significantly impair the resource. Now, these windows that are proposed for changes or adding windows those windows have not been installed. Go to the next page, page figures 25 and 26. And here, if we start on the left-hand side of the drawing, you see it looks like a flat roofed area, but that's actually a shed. It's just roof just looks flat here. And that's an addition. They propose to do is to clad it in board and bat to match the existing house, and to remove the existing window, put in a new window. Remove the door and transom and put in a window. This, and right to the right of that, you'll see what we'll call the big change. And that is the removal of this multi-light window and its replacement by a set of French doors, multi-light French doors. And this is the area where the plate height was raised 17 inches to accommodate the door. And this is the egress door. I was going to add on, that's what's being proposed. Yeah, there's a window in there now, and they're proposing the French doors as an egress point. The other changes that show up on here, to the right-hand side of that, are in an area that's an addition, not original to the original, at least best of our understanding, to the building. And those changes are quite minor. Skylight that will not be visible from the front of the house. Some other minor alterations. I would like to note that when we first visited the site, the roof was on the house. I should have said that before. And some of the construction work was in process, but not completed. So if you look at our original report, some of the photos that we had in there, they were photos of a sort of mid-construction point.
Mr. Chair, this is a question for Mr. Hazeltine. Now, is the top one where it says existing elevation, is that the true proportions of that window? Because it's my perception looking at the pictures where this shows a blue colored structure, that there's a horizontal window there. And it has a completely different proportion. Now I can see if you change from that vertical to the doors down below, there's perhaps not such a striking change, but for me, looking at this picture, that's what I'm looking at.
No.
You know, that's a more substantial change.
Well, that would be a question best answered by the architect. I'm not an architect, and I can base it on our visual inspection, but I didn't measure the opening. And those blue photos, I mean, there's actually two sets there are different images. Some have the blue color, the blue paint. Those are older. And there are more recent ones that were in one of our reports where the house had already been painted white. So I guess I'm just pointing that out, is that there's a series of photos. They don't always exactly match. The architect, I will say the architect was supposed to be here and they're not. And
The other thing I wonder about here is, I believe this is the door which the applicant said they had to change because the fire department had additional access. But from what I understand, these are like 7.0 doors. They're not 6.8. They're not your basic requirement. They're instead making an entirely different statement. When I see the pictures of what this looks like architecturally now, it's a real different statement.
I mean, having doors there rather than a window.
How
Correct.
they're,
It is different. There's a window and a door. They both might incorporate glazing, but they're different. And they're going to be somewhat different proportions. Whether this was a design choice, I don't know. But the conclusion of a report was that this change would not so alter the building that it would no longer be eligible.
thank you.
So I'd go on to the last set, which is the west elevation, next set of sheets. Yeah, I was going to mention that before. Okay, if we go to figures 27, 28, next page. It just shows like the existing and proposed elevations. The upper one is existing, the lower one is proposed. And the lower ridge height that you see, that is the addition. And so the original part of the house is the portion behind it with a taller, higher ridge line. These changes are the ones that are proposed but have not been made. So it says new window and window removed. That's in the 1970s edition, not in the original house. So if those are installed, if the project's approved in some form, then the purpose of that is to provide a more cohesive sort of inventory of fenestration for the house. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, the architects are good. So, but those changes haven't been made. We believe they're appropriate because they're going to allow the house to be architecturally more cohesive, but you'll still read these. I think they still look like additions. I mean, these additions are here. So we can either, leave the existing fenestration, which is not complementary to the vernacular architecture of the house, or something more appropriate could be installed.
And it looks like a smaller window is proposed to replace the existing window on that elevation.
On the original part of the house, Commissioner?
Yes, yes.
Actually, it's my understanding that, and of course, these drawings are not in the reports. Let me back up just a moment. It is my understanding that that window is going to remain. The original window, original part of the elevation is going to remain. Here. And some of this, I think, too, was some inaccuracies on the architect's drawing set,
Are,
but it's overall, it's
are those shown as existing? Is that 3 sets of when?
it's 3. It's
Yeah.
just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. There's lighting? Oh, I see. They're not not 3 casements.
They're not
I see.
cases, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're still on questions for applicants.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
just want to let you know that over here, the architect for the applicant team is online as well.
Okay, so any questions for the architect while we have him online? Commissioner Witosh?
I had some questions about the change of use and when the bathroom was installed and when the kitchen was installed, if in fact the original building was built as a garden shed. And that was in 49. It was remodeled 73, 74, long before it was even being considered as a historic resource. So I just want to know when all these changes of use occurred and were they permitted?
Okay, is that a question for Post Hazeltine?
Tim Hazeltine, I'm not a land use planner, and my ability to answer that question is severely limited. What we did was go through the permit file and the planning file. But I'll be honest, not honest, but I didn't see a permit for a change in use. But if that had occurred in the 40s, late 40s, 50s, those things, we have seen that before on projects where a building transitions from an essentially non-residential use to a residential use, but you don't always find a really clear permit for that. And I think that's not, I'm not saying it's not germane, Commissioner, but it's something that happened. And so what we're looking at, and those additions that were permitted in the early 70s, obviously were intended to be residential because there are bedrooms and other features you wouldn't find in a studio / storeroom / what have you, or garden shed.
So in a sense, what we're saying is that we don't know what happened between 49 and 73, but at the time that the addition was made in 73, there was a kitchen and there was a bathroom. We can say that? Question mark.
I'm sorry, before the additions.
In 73, when they added the little wing up there, the bedroom wing,
Mhm.
and I assume the bedroom then had a bathroom.
Correct. There's a
Okay, so
bathroom.
but the bathroom wasn't there in 49.
Not to the best of our understanding.
And so then the bathroom, and then there was a kitchen. Now, was the kitchen added at the time? Did any record of a kitchen show up in 1973?
I think it shows up on the plans, but I don't, when they altered it, when they added on to the building.
A related question. I'm looking at the document here that shows, looks like the kind of document that would be just in 1949. This is how you got a permit. So the main building had a main rectangle with the east addition and then the west side, north, south, east, west. I don't know if you can see that.
Well, Commissioner, I can't, if someone could hand me a copy and I could look at it.
Okay, so this is not in the.
We're talking to the applicant. If you're showing things that are not done by the applicant, then you just save those questions for the other speakers.
I actually don't know the source of this document. It's just,
Sorry, Howard, that packet is from the appellant team.
That is from the appellant, so
That's from the appellant.
nothing to do with what we're
Forgive me,
questioning right now.
forgive me, okay. But I notice in this document that the little,
Save that noticing for when after the other speakers. and you
Okay.
can ask.
all right, will do. So one other question here. I think I'm done
Okay,
for now.
thank you, Commissioner Watash. Any more other questions for the applicant before we move on? Commissioner
Yes,
Ty?
thank you. Mr. Hazeltine, is it important or relevant how this building originated as far as whether or not does it affect its potential for significance, whether it was originally a residence or not?
Not in the least. So what we're looking at is the significance of the building is its architecture and not its use. So no, I mean, not whether it started out as something smaller and something essentially non-residential, which is what Ms. McQuitty had alluded to in her conversation with Ms. Skybird, that originally it was had this particular use. I mean, I suppose it's possible there was a toilet room in there, a sink and such, was used as a studio. That'd be very logical. But the use itself is not what's significant for this building. I mean, there are times when buildings are significant because of what happened there. In this case, it's purely about architecture.
Would the fact that it was designed by a acclaimed architect add to its significance regardless of use?
Well, yes, I think that's what, I mean, if this building, I'll be blunt, if this building had not been designed by the Moody sisters, if this building was a board and batten vernacular type structure, small house, it would likely not be eligible unless it was part of a larger assemblage of resources that as a grouping were significant for one reason or another. So, you know, we can go into great detail about when the toilet went in, when the bathroom went in, when maybe someone added a stove. But it's not going to change significance. Significance is about the architecture, and is there enough of it left to convey its association with Moody? Does it still have enough of those details to convey that? And either, you know, it does or it doesn't. Our estimation, it did. Our conclusion for the report was that the changes that were, let's say, the as-built plus the proposed changes, because the as-built are the ones like raising the plate height and those things that were actually done, and then the other proposed changes, which are mostly the fenestration at this point, whether those alterations were so invasive and so damaging to integrity that the building would no longer be eligible, or it would impair it to the point that those changes should not be made. Generally, we give more latitude to alterations on the backs of buildings. The reason for that is it's the street facade that conveys, in most cases for buildings, conveys what's historic about the structure. And I would like to note, in my opinion, after working for many years here in Santa Barbara County, that giving some more latitude in the rear of the buildings is very helpful in allowing these historic resources to continue in use and remain a vital part of the community. It's great to say that no buildings should be changed and they're historic and they should stay exactly as they are, which would be the ideal. But buildings have to function in today's world and tomorrow's. So that's why it has been our practice to look at changes at the back with a little more, let's call it understanding, than if they were on the front. The changes on the front of this building, we believe, are appropriate in removing these really kind of non-characteristic single light windows and putting in something that's more appropriate. And of course, ideally, you know, the roof would go back to what it was originally. That would be the ideal. But there's really not a venue for us to make that finding. I mean, most projects that we worked on, as I mentioned earlier, have had some alterations. And we have worked on some fairly significant structures in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. Wonderful pieces of architecture, but it's rare that we find one that's really pristine. So we do take that into account, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you for that thorough answer. I'm satisfied.
Okay, Commissioner.
My question woke up. And so you might understand that from your report, that this building was not designed by Moody's?
No, our report says it was. That's our understanding.
It was designed, even
Yes.
though the address of 537 or.
Well, that's because it originally started out as an adjunct to a house. So that's why,
It was designed by Moody's.
that's
Okay.
what the record has shown, unless there's new evidence that says that that's not the case. But we have not seen that.
Another little detailed question. I'm looking at a photograph, which is part of the exhibit. The blue house, this is before the remodel commenced. And I'm looking at the west elevation, it appears. And that is not the west elevation. We would want to go continue, that's east. There, that one, please. So if you look at that existing elevation, we see a door, and then around the corner, I guess that's a porch that is with a column, supported on a column, is that right? And so the multi-lighted door, and there is a side light that is obscured by the porch. And when you turn the corner, there's no opening there, is that correct? I just want to confirm that I'm seeing correct.
Can I look at that photo more closely?
Yeah. So-
Door and then the big 1960s, 70 window that goes to the ground.
Right,
It's an open
that had
That
no,
we're gonna delete.
that was removed, yeah.
No,
No, no.
nothing's been removed.
It's
We
still-
only put on a roof. All the doors and windows are still there. And I'm to the point where I'm happy to pull my door and roof permit, but I need my house to be egress safe. So I'll leave the 60 windows. I was trying to make it a Moody
This is
system.
not related to my question.
Well, okay, well, that
That's a-
window
yeah.
is there.
I'll
It's
explain it. No worries.
1970s to the ground. And then the bedroom around the corner is the other window, is another 1970 window to the ground.
So I'm looking at the report, the historic structures report. Same elevation, different window. This window that was replacement window, multi-lighted, thank you, has a rake to it, as opposed to a flat head. I'm just confirming that, yeah.
If you walk in under the archway, that window goes up on an angle.
Okay,
Still there. Same window.
okay. So that you use the
Witosh?
same opening.
Commissioner Witosh, we just went over all the drawings. That's figure, if you look at the drawings, you can see figure 21 and 22. That is the same, what you're looking at on that picture. It's just from a different angle.
This is of the report?
Yes, in the report, we just went through picture by picture, figure 21, 22 on page 37.
Thank you. Okay.
And that's what you're looking at in that picture.
However, in this very figure, page 37, the existing north is showing the existing proposed north does not show a window there. It shows board and bat siding.
That's what she just said, that there hasn't changed it, that window's there. That was a proposal that has not happened yet.
Okay. I was pointing out that I'm trying to go to where do you go to find out what was changed, what is? Okay. Right.
Okay, let's keep this with questions for commissioners. We're strained here. Commissioner Wichash, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Questions? Applicants? Okay, so now we'll move on to public comment. And I have two speaker slips, but I don't have the one that I think someone wants to do a presentation. So I have an Amber Long and I have a Ferminia Murray. We should have a speaker slip for the other, Mr. Babbitt.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Babbitt, we'll let you go ahead and do your public comment.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. I'm Mark Shatillo, and I apologize. We will
okay.
submit speaker slips. I'm an attorney representing Mr. Babbitt. I'm going to do a brief introduction to the presentation and explain our concerns here, and then you'll be able to see some of the other evidence that applies to this particular project. I feel it's important that we cover the quick history of these unpermitted renovations that occurred. It was in 2021. Staff indicated it was before you last year that actually we're in the time warp, but that was in fall of 2021 when you last saw it. That's when the unpermitted renovations were undertaken. The site was red tagged. It's been in that state since that time. The applicant was required to apply for land use permits to be able to codify the various changes that they had made. They went to MBAR, got reviewed there, and we appealed the MBAR approval as well as the land use permit. And it's our belief that the roof permit was not properly issued because there was no consultation about any of the historical issues. Obviously, this is a structure that's eligible, and so that should have occurred. We hope that it will occur in the future. But the impacts to the historical components and then wrapped into this land use permitting process that's now on appeal presents the entire project available for review. Your role is advisory to the Montecito Planning Commission, which held a hearing. We presented a lot of this information. And the Planning Commission said, we'd like to hear from the HLAC in terms of what are the recommendations that you would have in terms of getting this structure and site put back into the proper historical context, and how can we fix this? And that's an interest I think we all share. How do we get out of this situation that we're in so that we do preserve the integrity of Harriet Moody's work here and allow reasonable use of the property? You will hear today from Bill Babbitt in a moment. He is a retired architect and has a presentation with a number of original drawings and some plans and elevations from Harriet Moody, including for this structure as well as some other structures. And then there are a couple of local experts, Dr. Murray and Ms. Long, who also will be speaking to the historical significance and the concerns that they have with respect to the adequacy of the analysis to date. I want to remind and emphasize to the commission the authority that's before you. The Montecito Planning Commission has to make a finding of conformity of every action, including building permits, with the applicable community plan. And the Montecito Community Plan has a goal. It says the goal of the plan is to preserve and protect properties and structures with historic importance in the Montecito community to the maximum extent feasible. So that's the standard that you should apply, because that's the standard that applies for the Montecito Planning Commission. Preserve and protect properties with historical importance to Montecito to the maximum extent feasible. So that's the one that they have to apply. And in your guidance, you should be applying that in order to help them get to that point, because that's the standard that they're required to meet. There are some CEQA issues here as well, and those turn on whether the renovations comport with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. If they do, then those renovations can be exempt. But if they do not, then CEQA is triggered, and they need to do an environmental review process as part of that land use permitting process. So there's two legal issues that are before you today, and your standards are, is this preserving and protecting the property to the maximum extent feasible? It's conceded that the property is eligible for listing as a place of historic merit. So there's no real question about that. The question is this maximum protection to the extent feasible? And do these changes comport with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation? So our goal is to get it right. In my letter, I outlined what we think we would like to have your commission give as your recommendations. And this is from my letter on page 3. Return the original roof line, roof height, and elevations to restore the character defining roof line in classic Moody design. Second, require textured irregular shingles, colored brown and gray, to emulate the Moody sisters' shake roof texture and color. Third, reject the black trim and white walls, and we believe it's appropriate to use a warm pastel wall color and a light or white colored trim reflecting the Moody whimsy. Fourth, require corrected and accurate structural and exterior plans. And I think we've heard already, and you've struggled with the things that we've been struggling with for some months, of these plans that don't seem to actually describe what's there or what's proposed, with vegetation superimposed on plans that obscure the critical elements. And very frustrating. And I think that's an important part, and it would be helpful for your recommendations to ask that this be stated clearly so we understand exactly what's being proposed. Fifth, require Moody appropriate large windows and small doors with the small eyebrows. And you'll hear from Mr. Babbitt on some concepts that have been applied elsewhere in other Moody cottages, which lend direction for what's appropriate for this one. And lastly, require that the guest studio building emulate and honor the Moody Enclave and the home at 539 Periwinkle, including re-roofing with appropriate materials and coloration that's consistent or compatible with that. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Babbitt to come up, and he'll make a presentation. And we have a presentation. I'll make sure.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Bill Babbitt. I am the next door neighbor to this project. And thank you for your time. I know this has been extremely confusing. It was a little frustrating to sit in my seat. And before I start the presentation, please ask me all the questions that you asked of the applicant, because I think I have very easy answers for you. I've done some side-by-side comparisons. But I'd like to, before I start my presentation, I would like to ask Post Hazelton report figure 25 and 26 be put on the page on the screen. There was a lot of talk about egress and whether this was an art studio, a shed. I know the answers to that. The biggest elephant in the room, obviously aesthetically and historically, has been the metal roof, in addition, and roof lines. In addition to that, we have repeatedly attended all of the prior HLAC and all the MBAR hearings and have pointed out why it's been so confusing to follow this project. And there's been a lot of discussion about the need to raise the roof to put a door in the back. But what I'd like to point out, on the existing elevation that was submitted to you and in Post Hazelton's report, there is an existing door on the left that's somewhat hidden behind vegetation that isn't there. There's one door all the way on the left. On this existing elevation, figure 25, there's an existing door to the left of the big square window that they don't show, that was removed. In addition, it's not shown, but there was a door immediately to the right. So when there's all this discussion about there was no way out of this building, there were 3 doors in this particular view, one hidden behind a big hedge, a second that's not shown, and then the existing window, as Mr. Duncan pointed out, is inaccurately represented. This and the new door that went in, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but I would just like to point out, when you look at the proposed elevation at the bottom, the tree is sort of highlighted a little bit less, and they show that there's a window there. But above, there's a very dark hedge put in front of one of the doors. I can answer the questions about when the structure became habitable, and that was outlined on the Post Hazelton report. So Please then move to my graphic presentation. So this is an overview of the Moody Enclave. This is Periwinkle Lane. The house in question is in red. We own the house to the left, which is a Moody cottage. There's a house to the right was a Moody cottage, a house across the street, down the street. And the original McQuitty property was on the upper right. I believe the McQuitties owned the entire property. They were the builders for many of these homes. So the address confusion may have been that they owned all of this property and this structure was built under their address, but it is in the existing condition. The existing studio, which we found a vintage drawing for, called it out as a studio designed by Miss Moody and a detached carport, which was designed by Miss Moody. Next slide, please. This is an article we found that just sort of celebrates women who helped shape Santa Barbara. And the first paragraph talks about how difficult architecture was as a profession for girls. And we think it's important to celebrate Miss Moody's work. That's a photograph or one of the most beautiful cottages on our street, Periwinkle Cottage. Next slide, please. In my research for this project, we located the great niece of Harriet Moody, who is also an architect. She's a Berkeley architect. She has the entire vintage collection of Miss Moody's drawings in her storage locker in Seattle and invited me to go to Seattle to research the project. I did find a vintage drawing, which we'll talk about later. But these are some examples, pencil drawings of some of the most beautiful drawings produced by Miss Moody. This niece is willing to donate this entire collection to Santa Barbara, which we're in the process of working out how that might occur. Next slide, please. Moody roofs are inspired by thatched roofs in the English countryside. On the left is a drawing that we found produced by Miss Moody, which emulates thatch. Obviously, you can't do thatch in a high fire zone. So they abstracted that with both wood shakes, other types of shakes. And for the most part, the Moody cottages now have textured, irregular, fire-safe asphalt composition shakes. But you can notice that in addition to the thatch, she was very specific about horizontal lines. And on the left, you see the horizontal lines every 7 courses or so. And on the right, on a wood shake roof, the horizontal lines. It was beautiful. Next slide, please. This is 537 Periwinkle. This is the house that I own with my partner next door, which is lovely. This was a real estate photo. It was red. It's now gray. We're planning to return it back to the whimsical red color. This is next door. You can see the roof is a composition asphalt, irregularly shaped brown-gray roof, which shows differently a little bit in the sun and the shade, but it is a brown-gray roof. Next slide, please. This was the real estate photo that enticed us to look at this house and buy it. This is, storybook, whimsical, Santa Barbara, Periwinkle Lane beauty. And you can see that even just in the sunlight, there's a little bit of texture on the roof, which is very appealing. The roof line is very low, and as typical for Miss Moody, she did little eyebrow raises over the roof line to allow for a door that would meet code. That's our front door. It has an irregular little diamond pattern in the door. It's beautiful. So next slide would be the project we're talking about, which changed the whole character of this home, our enclave, and what I think is the Moody legacy in Montecito. So there's a bright white paint. There is a stark, modern, black standing seam roof with a very heavy articulation in the front. The left slide is from the street or the Post-Hazelton report. You can see, and I'm going to speak about this more, they did alter the roof line on the left. If you see the very far left, there's a blip that was never really addressed. It's on the front elevation. And the slide on the upper right is, we have a 2-story home, and this is what we look down on from our Moody home in a Moody enclave. Okay, next slide, please. This is another shot where it's down the street, further down. We have the original vintage sketches that show kind of what the original roof line was like, but there was a lot of discussion that the work they did was just in the back or just on the side that neighbors don't see. You can see this is a view from the street, that the angled wall on the front left is very visible from the street. And when they came to HLAC the first time, they didn't mention that they tore that all down and rebuilt it. They didn't mention that at all. It was inaccurately represented, in my opinion, to you folks, but it's very visible to the street. Next slide, please. Another picture of the finished work. I just want to point out that not only was the work not permitted, they were red tagged and they ignored the red tag and continued the project. And the county had to go back 2 more times to try to stop the work, which is often happening on weekends, at night, in dark, Neighbors were upset. Every HLAC and MBAR presentation, I was the spokesman. Unfortunately, I was the then president of the association. I'm a retired architect. I own a Moody Cottage. I care very much about this, but every letter was signed by at least 4 neighbors. Please proceed. A little glimpse into the Moody scrapbook. These are some of the images that I found when I went to Seattle. And I assume many of you know that the existing Moody office and headquarters is located on Coast Village Road. On the bottom right or on the right, it's, I think, now a real estate office. And you may have seen the original renderings of their beautiful office and the inspiration for all this work on the upper left. We found the original beautiful pencil drawings, which may come back to Santa Barbara. We found the original pencil drawings of this building in the middle. And if you go right now today and look at the roof, there's a wood shake roof with its horizontal articulation, it's undulating. To me, this is a little heavy-handed. You know, this was lovely. It's inspired by English country, but she abstracted it and she made it appropriate for Santa Barbara, and she made it interesting and beautiful and appropriate in her residential designs. You can see in the top left, it's really fun that it was originally out in a country setting and there's a road, and they called it their tea room. As you know, they dismantled many structures during the Depression when people were getting away from their tax liability, and they collected antiques and parts. And this was their tea room. It was their antique shop. It was their office. Harriet's niece told me stories about everything that went on in these, that she would go as a little girl and was so inspired to become an architect. There's a letter there which you can't read, which is great. It's from 1933, signed by Harriet Moody, whining about how long it was taking the WPA project to get the road, Coast Village Road, built. Where it would take a normal engineers 3 weeks to do. Next slide, please. These are some vintage this is a vintage photograph that we found in the archives showing this particular cottage with its brown gray asphalt, irregularly shaped pattern roof prior to the real estate bed that you'll see in a moment. It had a, you know, nice, interesting blue color and white trim, but this is a photograph found in the vintage file. Next slide. This is the real estate ad that was when the owners bought it. And that's the real estate blurb that was attached to the ad, which says, charming Moody Sisters Cottage, tucked into small enclave of like architectural properties. There was no question in the historian report that this is a Moody cottage. It was advertised as a Moody cottage. The owners were informed it was a Moody cottage. So in application for an over-the-counter roof permit, they did not disclose their knowledge that this was a historic property or had this significance. Next slide, please. There's been a lot of discussion about what's black and what's brown gray. And these are 2 photographs. And I will acknowledge that the sun can make a light roof look a little darker, but there's no question that the existing roof was not black, like for like black. In addition, just as an aside, they mentioned that the permit, they were told by their insurance agents 2 weeks after they bought it that there was a problem. Please look at the original permit. The permit that they applied for predates that. They applied for the permit during escrow, and they actually listed the owner. If you look at the permit, look at the name of the applicant on the permit. It is not the Seiberts. It is the heir to the person who died in the home, Mary Jane Barber Trust. It's there. So we're arguing that the roof was never black, black for black light, whether it's shingles or black, that's black. You can see the chimney is a blue-gray, charcoal gray. The shingles were definitely a brown, light gray. Next slide, please. There were so many things that were discussed in MBAR. MBAR said, you know, some of their comments were, this is unfortunate, this isn't a Moody cottage anymore. MBAR actually said, I believe this is the fault of the planning department. And in addition to many of the inaccuracies we pointed out, the only comment that they insisted on was that the color be changed to a lighter color. They asked Mr. Seibert if he would do that. He refused. They threatened to cancel the project, said give him to the rest of the day. He went back, he came back with the paint chip color on the upper left, as close as I can match it to an off-white color. You heard that they offered to change the roof to a shingle roof, and they proposed a charcoal gray and black shingle roof. This is my rendering of what that might have looked like. It's not a brown gray, it's black and charcoal gray. I don't think there's any, may have been one, but the majority of them emulate thatch and are brown gray. In addition, their drawings call out black trim and black windows. So this is an image. I think that was unacceptable. There were many other reasons that we did not agree to the settlement, mostly to do with also the fact that we feel that inaccurate drawings have been inaccurately representing the scope and the details of this project. There have been 8 submissions to the county, 8 submissions of drawings. Even now, I will show you that I believe they are still incorrect. Please proceed. This is not me designing it, but this is giving the commission some idea if there had been a brown gray roof and if there had been white trim, that this just immediately reads at least as cottage. You could argue how whimsical do you want to be, but that to me, compared to the prior slide, at least if there were white trim and white windows, would emulate cottage. Storybook, your decision more than mine, but this is an example. Let me show you 2 more, just food for thought. If they change the color to a yellow color. I'm not designing this, I'm just showing you examples of what could be whimsical and more storybook. Next slide, please. If it were red. Excuse me, I didn't interrupt your position. No, I'm sorry. I'm standing up for what I think is right historically and for the accuracy and the safety of the structure.
You can leave if you like, that's fine.
This is
Okay, continue, please.
I'm very sorry that commissioners are having to deal with this. Please understand we've been dealing with it as a neighbors and community for several years.
Okay, let's just continue, please.
A few slides of what was happening behind the scenes to give you a sense. I think if I re-listened to the last HLAC where Commissioner Wittasch appropriately asked, gee, that seems really tall. How tall is the addition? The answer, I think, was 8 to 12. Mr. Hazeltine referenced it's been changing. It's 17. Commissioner Wittasch also asked, gee, those doors, that opening looks so tall. How tall are the doors you're proposing to go in there? And Mr. Seibert answered, standard 6'8". They immediately showed up on MBARS as 7'2", which is 6 inches oversized, just for the record. Next slide, please. This shows the significant unpermitted construction that was occurring behind the project. They obviously had started to put the roof on and painted it. I think, one can imagine why they did that. I don't exactly know. But not only did they change the roof line on the left, but they completely tore down the section in the distance and rebuilt it back. These are post-Hazeltine photographs. And you're photographing me, I really am not comfortable with that.
Mrs. Skyberg,
It's not appropriate.
the applicant has the floor. If you could, you'll have ample opportunity to respond.
Please continue.
So this is some examples of what was done or unpermitted in the back of the house. These are photographs, I believe, from the post-Hazeltine report. At the time, it was red tagged. They did not comply with the red tag, and as you'll see by photographs they present, they continued and completed the project. Next slide, please. More photographs documenting the work. You can see there's an all-new sill plate, there's an all-new top plate, there's new posts and beams, there's new roof framing. And when we get into how much they changed the roof, the hot water heater in the foreground is a good reference point. Next slide, please. More photographs of the increase in break in the roof line and the work that was going on beyond that. Next slide, please. More construction. Next slide, please. There was a lot of discussion about whether this was a tool shed or an art studio. These are photographs from the inside of the house from the real estate listings. And you can see the area in the far right where they raised the roof in the distance. and a very long horizontal window that Mr. Duncan rightly pointed out. Please continue. This is, in my opinion, a true demonstration of what was done there, which was that they demolished to the slab 2 areas. Area 1, I think it's a little bit larger than I've depicted. These are very rough diagrams. And area number 2 that they didn't disclose originally to you. Next slide, please. This is a 3-dimensional graphic depicting the cottage and the area that was demolished down to the slab and built back in a different configuration. Next slide, please. The yellow indicates the one section of roof that they informed HLAC last time is the one roof that they changed. We believe that they changed more than that. Next slide, please. On this proposed east elevation, the heavy red line indicates the entire northeast quadrant that was down to the slides, that down to the slab that's indicated in the photographs. Slide, please. This is a very important photograph because it shows that horizontal window that I showed you from the inside, which is misrepresented on their existing conditions, and a lot of discussion about there was no way to get out of this building. I think that aside from the front door,
You know, this, let the appellant please, you know, if you cannot control yourself, you need to step outside, please.
Aside from the front door, there are 3 existing doors to the back. The fact that they chose to do unpermitted construction and take out 2 of those doors is a fact that must be considered. Next slide, please. This is back to the Moody scrapbook. These are images or photographs we found in the Moody files. And, you know, there was reference in the lawyer's letter about small doors and big windows. So on the upper right, you can see there's a big feature window with a lovely roof on top of it and a small door. On the left, a cottage, not breaking the roof line, but they do break the roof line modestly for a window feature. On the right, can I ask please to have some quiet while I'm presenting? I didn't do that during your presentation. Again, from the Moody scrapbook, this is an indication of somewhat of the Moody aesthetic. On the right is a sketch by Miss Moody, big feature window, small door. Next slide, please. Additional photographs from the Moody archive, particularly on the upper right, both showing their lovely roofs, their thatched roof inspiration with shingles or composition tiles. And on the right, a door with a mild eyebrow window, breaking the roof line. Similar on the left. Next slide, please. More images from the archives about the beauty of the roof, them break on the upper right, breaking it with a little eyebrow. On the left, you know, how they really considered their roofs and actually even brought their shingles down onto the fireplace. Harriet, niece, and I were marveling at the fact that they were trying to put wood cozy elements on the fireplace on the left. On the right is the cottage that I believe has been torn down on Middle Road without permits, and which we're mentioning, you know, there's concentration on trying to preserve these cottages. Next slide, please. Again, Moody Archive, beautiful pencil drawings we found showing the big windows, the smaller doors. I think a very good example, this is a cottage, the bottom drawing is a ranch on Middle Road. If anyone knows the barns that Ellen renovated and bought by Aragande, this is right next to that project. And it shows how important the low roof lines were, and where they broke it, they did it with a bay window or they did it with a complementary roof articulation. Next slide, please. More from the archive about how the Moody's really considered their roof lines. These are beautiful drawings that show a little bit of a pitch on the left, how they articulated it, the roof over the door. They broke the line as and even how they handled the shingles is a detail in the foreground, where they raked it up a little bit as it came down to the roof line. Roof line's very important, roof material very important. Next slide, please. This is an image of the work that was done in the back, and it just gives you some perspective about the excessive raising of the roof in the back. If their argument was that they needed to have egress, that they could have done maybe 2 or 3 inches, if that, for a code compliant door or an eyebrow, And on the quadrant on the far right, that they could have more upfront shared with you that they were breaking the roof line up there. Next slide, please. This is an example of that drawing I showed you on the top. You can't really see it so well, but Ms. Moody just sharing how she might have handled the break on the drawing on the left. The bottom is the existing condition, and the drawing in the center is mine, what they call a back of the envelope. If they were really needing to break the roof line, that they could have done it in a modest way to get out of the back. This is not a design. This is a 2-second back of the envelope sketch to say how you might have appropriately represented needing a different door other than the 3 that were there. Next slide, please. In addition, I think we've pointed out the inaccuracies in the drawings. So on the upper right is the window as exists. As Mr. Duncan pointed out, it was a horizontal window. On the top left, in this drawing, they show it as a square window, which is incorrect. They do show the door in this particular, this is the last MBAR set. And then they do show the windows, the French doors that they're proposing. But then if you look to the right on the floor plan, they show them as 7-2 and they call them existing. These are not existing doors. They are proposing new doors there. Next slide, please. This is the before and after on the front elevation. While it's minor in nature, it does represent the fact that you can see on the left quadrant, that was the existing window. The existing window has not been changed yet. The vintage of that, not a discussion at this moment, but the roof line, you can see that the existing roof line was touched on the front facade and never really addressed or said, oh, it's just minor, okay? But it was addressed, it wasn't represented properly. Next slide, please. This is a summary of all the official MBAR hearings. It's a little bit hard to see, but HLAC was in 2021 in the gray. I think it was a year and a half while they were finishing the project and before they went back to MBAR. What's important about the first MBAR visit #1 is that we raised a lot of these questions, the inaccuracies, the roof, and the commissioners found this is a 1-bedroom cottage where they're talking about existing as-built conditions. They couldn't understand the drawings. Like there were so many questions that you all had, they couldn't understand them. So they said, well, we need to have a site visit. So then the next date, they scheduled a site visit for all the commissioners, the neighbors. We walked around the project. They were allegedly fixed their drawings, and I pointed out all the inaccuracies, all the questions, similar to what I pointed out. And they were supposed to have a hearing that afternoon. They canceled the hearing because the drawings continued to be so inaccurate. I think there was project fatigue when I went back to MBAR a couple of more times, and they just sort of stopped focusing on it. And what's been difficult on the bottom here, it's 4 snapshots in time. Letter A is the existing conditions as they actually found it, the real estate photos. Number B would be as-built conditions when they were stopped by the red tag. C would be as-built conditions after they ignored the red tag and continued to build. And then E is that they're still asking to do more work on drawings that are still confusing and inaccurate. Next slide, please. I've pointed this out since the beginning. First MBAR, I didn't have enough time before we went to HLAC, where the front northeast quadrant by photographs, I know this is hard to see and for the non-architects in the crowd, there's no dispute that what they show as existing roof on the front northeast quadrant is incorrect. In the black, it's my representation by looking at the photographs. What it is, you can argue about the minor details of it, but the point is that they tore down the existing roof on the section that they didn't tell you they tore down the roof on. And they changed it more than they told you that they did. Next slide, please. These 2 slides are out of order. Can we go to the next slide, please? These 2 slides were my first presentation to MBAR, where I asked a lot of questions, and my red marks mainly focused on why are they showing big trees in front of a historic house where there are no trees? I think that on the post-Hazeltine drawing, they show trees in front of this elevation, different trees. You'll see from the photographs, and if you walk down the street, there are no trees in that view, which hampered folks accurately reviewing the roof line and the changes that they were making, including the ridge that they were putting in the back. and the roof on the left that they tore down and didn't disclose. So go back. This is the proposed elevation trees. This is the existing elevation trees. Less trees, if you see less trees at the roof line and go down to the next one, more leaves. But many details of this can be looked into further detail. But overall, this is why we've been so concerned all the way through this project. Please go to the next slide. On the left is the drawing that was the last drawing at MBAR, and the blue colored in walls on the left in this northeast quadrant is typically called poché for the non-architects. It's really a color coding to tell whoever's looking at the drawing what are new or changed walls. That's what they show as new and changed, a few on the inside. On the right, that's my markup of the new and changed walls. So considerably more. So you'll see that my suggestion here that the northeast quadrant, shown as the new walls in blue on the left, appears inaccurately disclosed. And on the right, it appears what it was truly built. My last two slides, next slide, please, are considerably more minor in the discussion of the roof and the roof lines on the main house, but there were some changes that were made to the accessory building, and we point out some of these changes, including when they did the roof and adding skylights that they don't disclose on their drawings. It's minor. They were trenching for utilities to go back there. They poured a slab after they were told to stop work. And we raised this because of our ask that this accessory building had work done and it should be made of the same color and materials since they worked on it and did construction. Next slide, please. Now, this is their photograph, and you can see the trenching and the work that was going on in the accessory building being a stark black color on a Moody site where the color is of much conversation. Last slide, please. So this is just a reminder that the front of this house was altered. It wasn't all in the back, and this completes this presentation. I can't remember all the things that were said by Ms. Seibert and the historians, but I would welcome any of the questions that you have. In addition, we did submit the vintage drawing that we found, and if you'd like, if you want to put that up, I can try to walk you through. This is a drawing. It says details for studio lot 85 at the bottom. This was permitted with its own carport. There was a Moody studio and a Moody carport. It doesn't necessarily say art studio or garden shed. This was permitted in 1949. Whether this was the final drawing, I don't know. I'm representing that I found this. It looks like it could have been a progress drawing. It could have been some iteration of a drawing leading up to it, but it does indicate the roof lines in the front. And it does, I can walk you through in greater detail if you have questions. I did a markup, which I have on a thumb drive, but clearly indicated the intent of this building. There's no evidence, unless Post Hazelton can verify where their source of garden shed or art studio was. We believe this was built as a guest studio. In Post Hazelton's report on page 9, it suggests that 8 years after it was built in 1949, the county recorded it as its own parcel. So 1957 would have been when it was made its own parcel. There's no indication of needing drawings for kitchens or bathrooms. It was, we believe, a guest studio. I'm welcome to have a source confirm that, but there were no modifications required, and it was recorded. I'm getting my facts mixed up, but if you look at pages 8 and 9, it tells you that it was officially made a residence in around 1957, 8 years after it was built in 1949. Ms. Seibert said it became a residence in 1974, which I'm not sure where that number came from. This concludes my presentation. I very much welcome any questions. I'm very sorry for your trouble and your time on this presentation, on this appeal.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, like I said, we'll go through all public comments first, and then we'll go back to questions. So I have a couple of more speaker slips here. We'll first start with Fermina Murray, and be followed by Amber Long.
Good morning, Chair Kaufman Gray and Commissioners. Fermina Murray, local historian. And the last time I came before you, it was about an illegal demolition of a landmark Moody Sisters house at 170 Middle Road in Montecito. I sure hope you got it resolved. I want to disclose that Pam and Tim are friends and good friends, sometimes respectfully disagree. You have a copy of my letter, and so I won't bother with that. But my biggest concern is the black metal roof. It is the central element of this project that is busting the most important character-defining feature of the house as being worthy of a county place of historic merit. The black metal roof violates the Secretary of Interior standards and CEQA guidelines protecting historic resources. So, as Mr. Babbitt's presentation shows, to protect and preserve the 539 Periwinkle Lane, Moody Sisters House, as a place of historic merit resource, I strongly request that this commission complies with the directive from the Montecito Planning Commission that supported the appeal by Mr. Babbitt and the team of historians and attorneys. We are asking your commission for guidance about the entire project, including the roof, as none of the renovations, even with post-Hazeltine recommendations, they do not meet the Secretary of Interior standards. So, once again, I want to repeat that we support the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, the following actions: return to original roof line, roof height, and elevations to restore the character-defining roof line in classic Moody design, require textured irregular shingles, color brown and gray to emulate Moody and McKitty shake roof texture and color, and reject black trim and stark white walls, and we suggest appropriate warm pastel wall color and light or white trim reflecting Moody's whimsy. Require, this is so important, we are so stampede, so please require corrected and accurate structural and exterior plans in moving forward. Require Moody appropriate large windows and small doors with small eyebrows for any new doors. You have many samples, the project has many samples to follow. And lastly, require that carport and non-residential utility buildings be subordinate to the house and to emulate and honor the Moody Enclave and home on 539 Periwinkle Lane. It is important to treat the accessory buildings to match, to be compatible with the main buildings, because this house, as you know, in post-Hazeltine report, is eligible for a place of merit designation. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the report, about the project, whatever you want to ask. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have Amber Long.
I think we're in afternoon, so good afternoon. My name is Amber Long. I'm a principal architectural historian and owner of Long Historic Preservation Services. A lot has been said today. I prepared a statement outlining some other things I think may be considered. Some may have been mentioned, some might be new. Post-Hazeltine report states that the Moody Cottage is eligible as a place of merit, but not eligible for listing on the California Register. However, because it's a place of merit, so eligible locally, it should be treated as a historic resource under CEQA. In order to make an adequate analysis of all of these changes to this historical resource and for the potential for historic impacts, some information is missing from Post-Hazeltine's report, and I'd like to provide for you what I think those should be. First is a period of significance. And so we are talking about when this was built, when changes were made. When you're treating a resource as eligible under CEQA, you have a period of significance where you discuss what changes were made when, were they made within a period of significance, were they not? So I'm going to go ahead and suggest that this period of significance should be 1949 to 1973. We know that changes happened in the 50s. And the additions in 1973 are over 50 years old and primarily consistent with the Moody style. Changes to the property that have occurred, changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained and preserved per the rehabilitation standard. And I argue that those 1973 alterations fall into that category. The post-Hazeltine report also did not clearly identify the character-defining features of the Moody Cottage. Potential impacts are analyzed regarding the degree to which they alter these character-defining features. In my letter dated February 15th of this year, I described the character-defining features of a potential historic district on Periwinkle Lane. Those features are the steeply pitched roofs with irregular shakes mimicking thatched roofs, picturesque masking, small diamond paned leaded windows, clipped gables, stacked gables, shed-style roofs, dormers, shake siding, board and batten siding, brick siding, brick chimneys, bay windows, and tripartite windows. Other important details of this group of homes are the semi-rural setting, the oak groves, sycamore trees, and the lack of street improvements like sidewalks and street lamps. This cottage also has character-defining features that include the large front window, small doors, and low plate heights. Harriet Moody salvaged doors, windows, flooring materials, and anything else that could be reused from those Montecito estates that were being liquidated during the Depression. So these salvaged items and materials drove the design and the dimensions of her work. It's my professional opinion that by describing the as-built condition in the post-Hazeltine report, but assessing the pre-alteration integrity of the cottage, that their conclusions for the proposed project are not consistent with the rehabilitation standard. So I ask that you consider this information as you deliberate today. My colleagues have clearly laid out our requests that would result in consistency with the rehabilitation standard. Post-Hazeltine mentions that this was Harriet Moody's final commission before she retired. Mildred Moody, Harriet's sister, was interviewed in the Santa Barbara News Press in 1989 and stated that they chose muted colors on the homes with trim in the same color, a deeper version of the body color, or white. This supports our request for an appropriate pastel wall color with a light or white trim that would reflect Moody's whimsical cottage style. Black trim, roof, and accents are not consistent with the Moody style. This cottage is also in the center of a potential historic district. Therefore, changes to this cottage carry weight beyond this existing project. The carport, while not 50 years old, is adjacent to a historic building and within the boundaries of that potential historic district. Therefore, it needs to be compatible with the Moody style, including the roof using compatible textured colored shingles, wall, and trim colors. I'd also like to state that the comment made earlier by Tim regarding removal of additions is not actually consistent with the rehabilitation standard. When you would remove additions is when you're using the restoration standard, where you're restoring the building to a specific period in time. And at that point, you would remove later additions. That's not what the rehabilitation standard says. As I mentioned earlier, it says later changes can become historic in their own right. I also encourage you to think of the cumulative impacts as we talk about each individual change to the building and whether or not that individual change may or may not be consistent. Please also consider the overall cumulative effects of the changes that they have made and that we're requesting be brought consistent with the standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do you have any online public comments? Speakers?
We have no more requests to speak online. And if anybody else in the audience would like to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so now is the time, as I said earlier, that the commissioners can ask questions to the public speakers. And then after the commissioners finish, then we'll go to the applicants if they have any responses to the public speakers. So we'll first start with the commissioners. Anyone have any questions for the public comment speakers?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Duncan.
Yeah, if I could hear from Ms. Long again, those late comments from the Moody sisters regarding coloration. There was, if I understand it correctly, there's a preference for a deeper version of the body color of the house for the trim or white.
Correct. So lighter, deep version of the same color or white.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything about roofing apart from the drawings that we have and what was instituted?
I do believe that a comment that the applicant made regarding red roof tiles does also come from the same Moody quote where they said red roofs. However, that does not mean that all the buildings use red roofs. As we can see, the majority of them are brown gray from, you know, that thatched look on Coast Village Road to the more modern shingles that are being emulating that feature. So I suppose that there would be some room in the discussion of the roof, but perhaps to our point today, black is not appropriate, metal is not appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Duncan. Any other commissioners? This is the time to ask your questions. Commissioner Witosh, do you have a question?
I have conflicts here with my questions. My question is a detailed question, and we've just had a very, very good presentation on the overview of the whole history project, everything. But there's a little, when you look at this drawing, which was shown by Mr. Babbitt, and there is a little faint outline of an angled piece of building that angles off up to the top there. And that angle is a dotted line at this time. This is in the day of McQuitty and the details of what was built. And it looked like there was no angled piece there. That piece became a part of the building at a subsequent time. And I just wonder, does anyone have any history, whether it's the historians or whether it's Mr. Babbitt, of how that little dotted line became a solid line and with a return to the building? It's a significant part of what became the architecture of the building.
Go ahead. You can go.
I've submitted all the information that I have, but I would point out, and I have a more detailed, colorful analysis of this, that little dotted section is shown on the Cyberts drawing on their site plan. So if you look on the site plan, it's no longer dotted. It was colored in as solid. I think Post Hazeltine refers that it may have been a porch at some point, but what's very important is the section on the right-hand side shows that the roof continues down. It did not level off as maybe it was done later on. So this is the best indication of all the information we have, but I want to point out that that dotted line became a solid line on the site plan that was used when they did permitted changes in 1973.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. It appears that it did. It appears, and I have a thumb drive if you want to get into the weeds on this, but it appears that that slope continued out for that another 3 or 4 feet, but whatever change was made was permitted and they maintained the same roof line. They went to the same roof line. But yes. I believe that they extended the roof. Whether they kept the same hinge point at the top, no one knows. Whether they continued the same hinge point at the top and they just went further out, their end point was at a similar plate height. I don't have opinion. These are diagrams. I think it may have climbed a little bit. I don't know whether they kept the same hinge point or they went up a little bit higher to get the same plate height at the bottom.
Okay, any more questions? Any more commissioner questions? No, okay. So let's move to the applicants. Would you like a response or any response or rebuttal to the public comments?
Okay. Love it to be up there. But just, I think you asked a question when the kitchen was added, and these are the plans from 1973 to 74, 5, 6. They were doing the carport and the house, and they were finally approved in 74. I mean, 76, but this is showing the kitchen addition, but you can't get it up, so. It's gone. Yeah, there shows the kitchen addition, the bathroom addition. There's a bunch of plans from the 70s. And the carport was torn down and they replaced it with new carport. I have those plans. The original house was 500 square feet and now it's over 800. About 307.
Okay, thank you. So this is, do you have any more response you'd like to make? This is your time to speak up.
The thing I would like to say is I'm here because we're here to be brought up to be compliant. That's what we're trying to do. You can talk as much as you want about what went on. Here we are today. We would like to just move forward and be compliant. We feel we have a permitted, approved roof that is already on that is compliant. We would like to be compliant with egress and have doors that you can actually get out of, whether we had 2 doors, 3 doors, they're in the pictures. Yes, I agree, the trees, you can't see it, but there's a door by the bedroom. It's about this wide. I'm not a big person. I cannot barely get out the door, let alone a fireman's gonna come in with his pack. We were changing that to a window. We need a proper door in this house to get out of. You can't get into the backyard besides walking through the bedroom to get out a door this big.
Excuse me.
The other thing is we were pre-approved at MBAR. We were approved with our metal roof. We were approved, we changed our color. The neighbor said it was too bright. We changed it to a less bright color. we already have a pre-approved roof, a pre-approved paint color, and our windows are approved. So I'm very sorry that we have different tastes, and he's my neighbor, but you know, I don't like things that go on at his house, but I'm not here, you know, trying to bully him or say things that are untrue to get him to change. He took our driveway in escrow. While we were in escrow, he took our whole view easement. We could pull out like this to get out our right of way, and he planted trees, hedges in our escrow. I've been dealing with beehives. I told him I can't get into my car. My kids are being stung. He finally took care of the bees after I went to Periwinkle Board. He told us when we moved in, we were owed him $150,000 to take down a telephone pole because he didn't want a telephone pole in front of his house, and the wire went to our house. I've lived in Montecito since '94. I've always had lovely neighbors. Then I went as far as to say, hey, let's just bury the hatchet and we'll give you your roof. And then that just opened a bigger can of worms of, this is what I want. Now I don't like your window. Now I don't negotiate like I tell my kids. I don't negotiate with terrorists. I'm done negotiating. And if you guys don't even want us to do new windows and doors and get rid of the 60 doors, I don't care anymore. I just want to live in peace. Thank you.
I can shed a little light that the footprint never changed of the addition on the eastern side of the house. So the only thing that's happened in that area is the plate height increased. There's a lot of allegations and misstatements going on about what the prior roof was. That was always a flat roof. I shared to MPC the roof pitch prior to any construction. The only reason that that's a little confusing, that looked like there was a prior gable, is they changed the direction of the roof over that flat area, so it had it gave the illusion of a vertical pitch or some sort of vertical gable that was occurring, but it was only the angle of the flat asphalt shingle roofs, and it actually had a ridge on the flat portion. So it's a little confusing because you could imagine that there was some sort of raised element in the middle of that, but it was always flat. All that we did was raise the plate height because in that 2B bathroom that we wanted to do, you couldn't stand up. You would hit your head on the outside edge. So even currently, the plate height is very low on that side. There's been a lot of photographs shared. You guys did an excellent presentation of information, although a lot of it's manipulated. There's a photograph that Bill shared of the skylight that was existing. He's saying that we put that in, and you can see in his presentation that there's a skylight that has always been in the house. And there's many cases of that. I, out of respect, didn't interrupt the conversation. And I really, really don't like the fact that there's been ex-party discussions that have happened prior. That seems very unethical and very biased towards the appellants. So I don't appreciate that. That's should not be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so yes.
One follow-up.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Based on the presentation by the others. I just spoke to Pam, and yes, the additions that were added to the house in 1973 are now more than 50 years of age. We did the report in 2021, they were not. But even if they were, they are not associated with a notable architect that made important contributions to the heritage of Santa Barbara County or Montecito. While they do have board and batten siding, their window types are not a characteristic feature of Moody Sister design, single light windows. And so that's why our conclusion was, yes, they're older, but do they contribute to the building's historic character? Do they exemplify Harriet Moody's design aesthetic? No. So that's why we concluded that those are not part of a designation. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's do any final questions at all before we move on to comments from commissioners? Anyone have any last minute questions? Okay, so let's move on to comments. Now, just remember, let me just repeat what we're doing today. We've been through a lot. The Santa Barbara County HLAC will review, discuss, and provide comments on a request for a land use permit to abate zoning violation for unpermitted exterior changes to an 831 square foot Moody Sisters cottage. And these include raising the northeastern portion of the roof by 3.5 inches, raising a portion of the eastern roof by 1 foot 5 inches, and installing new doors, windows, and sidings. Replacement windows match the appearance of the house's historic window types with regard to the type of appearance of glazing bars. So we're doing comments that will be going back to Montecito Planning Commission. And also there's of course comments on the roof itself. So who would like to start on comments? No one wants to be first, huh? Commissioner Duncan, do you want to?
Fools rush in. I think that this is a very problematic case in that you don't want to be overly heavy-handed when you're dealing with historic resources. But we do know that two things can happen. One is historic resources like Moody Sisters cottages can be knocked down in a single weekend, or they can die by 1,000 nicks. And we definitely can see over a period of time that cumulatively the significance and historic value of a resource can really depreciate. I'll tell you some of the things that influence me more in terms of how I come to this particular structure. Yes, it may not have been planned originally as a full-blown residence, but I think it was definitely planned as part of this whole complex. And with that in mind, and it's pretty clear that the Moody Sisters thought that little details were important. And that's how they lent the character they did to their structures. And you can see that obviously with these roofline details and how you would treat some of the idiosyncratic features they pieced together. Interestingly enough, this actually mimicked what happens to vernacular architecture over time as people actually change their buildings. Okay? So the trick is, how do you change the buildings in a manner which doesn't do it so dramatically that it seems totally out of place? And so hopefully this commission can give guidance in that respect. That's what we're here to do. And that's one of the value of having us comment before people make changes that could radically affect historic resources. And that's why it was sort of problematic from day one that they changed the roof, which is something that we all see from the public perspective and see it quite dramatically. And we've heard how roofs are important to Moody Sister structures. Okay. So when we first saw this in 2021, I didn't think the roof was appropriate then, and I continue to believe that this roof is not really appropriate. I think it would definitely be better, and this is, I think, the single most change we could recommend in order to preserve historic resources to the maximum extent feasible, what's actually written in the community plan. And the Planning Commission is looking to us as far as direction and consistency with the general plan. So the other thing is, it's clear to me from the pictures I can see that the original roof here wasn't black. And it definitely would make a lot more sense for this to go towards a brown or a gray. Yeah. And it would make a lot more sense for it to be a shingle type composition in this case, I would suspect, rather than a metal roof. So that's guidance we could certainly give in terms to try and really do the most at making this element of an entire complex of Moody sister structures be consistent. And I think there's a good argument that there's a district here. And even though this is a little teeny thing, perhaps just, I don't know whether it was a guest studio, whatever it was, but because it's a contributing element to that larger district, it gains more importance. So I'm willing to give it a little bit more attention, okay? Perhaps not as much attention as the neighbors, but they all live in Moody Sisters houses, so they really contribute themselves to that. Okay.
Excuse me, this is for commissioners only.
Okay. I think that would be some good direction to deal with the roof. Secondarily, there are certain places where the change in the roof line is so dramatic and they're part of a larger thing that to me, it is not compatible with the existing construction. And that is supposed to be something that new additions are supposed to be. They're supposed to be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. You're supposed to be able to distinguish them, but they're supposed to be compatible too. Where this really pops out to me is where I see the oversized French doors that have been placed in the back and the roof line raised to 17 inches above where it was before. If the issue was access, you could gain the access with a standard 6/8 door, and you could have gotten away with a minimal roof line change. And that's what I thought we were getting in 2021 when we first looked at this project. So those are the two things I could. Now, the other thing, obviously, that would be a very important thing that doesn't change as many elements of it is the house color. It's pretty obvious that this is not a color scheme, black and white, that really fits with the Moody Sisters aesthetic. And having lived in a small English thatched cottage myself, actually, I can tell you they're not prone to be black and white with metal roofs. So I would be in favor of giving some direction that the body and trim color be considered in the direction that Ms. Long pointed out that we have in writing from the Moody Sisters themselves. Okay. Beyond that, I think there's actually some good things that are proposed as part of the project. Getting rid of the asymmetrical window that you can see on the front that obviously doesn't fit in here. And this is one of the 1973, presumably, changes that I wouldn't want to see perpetuated, are good things. And I think we could argue a long time about all the other small details, but those are basically just three things. that I think we could give guidance on. And they may or may not be taken ultimately, but they're the ones that sort of pop out for me. And thank you all for the community's attempt to preserve these structures. I think although we may disagree about, how we go about that, the overall goal, I think, is the same. And I think it actually will add value to this property to the extent it fits in this complex of Moody Sisters structures. Thank you.
You go over your, what you feel about the back door. I'm trying to keep track, and I'm a little about the raising of the roof and the door and that area.
What I'm thinking is that the argument was that they needed access. Well, they may need access and they may need a full-size door. I've actually lived in houses with small doors like you're talking about, and I know that's problematic. And I can see that they probably wanted to keep as much light as they could, so they actually chose to replace that window with a French door instead of just a single door. I will buy that, but I'd like it just to be a standard side one at 6'8". That's what I expected to see when we looked at it in 2021. So, and that way you don't have to raise the roof line the way it has been. It could be raised with a really small eyebrow detail like Mr. Babbitt recommended, but I think that could be worked out. The idea being not to pop up and disturb that overall roof line any more than is necessary. Yeah. Right now it's at 17 inches, and that is one of the things that's listed as having been done unpermitted.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we have one commissioner comments. Who would like to go next? Commissioner Malcolm.
Okay. Amazing, Lansing. Yes, I agree. My comments are a little bit more simplistic though, because I can see the macro picture of the neighborhood. It's a Moody Sisters neighborhood. What's survived over the years, what's left. This originally was designed, the property we're talking about is originally designed as part of the Moody Sisters neighborhood. Of course, it's been altered over the years, modified. However, basically this structure is out of balance with the neighborhood now. Sounds like the county dropped the ball on it, especially permitting the roof, whatever. That's up to them to mitigate however they want. However, it could be done. Yeah, I would like to see some more conformity with this place, even with the alterations that have been made in the 70s and whatnot. So I guess the advice I have to the Montecito Board of Architectural Reviews asking us to make comments is to get this place in balance with the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Malcolm. Who would like to go next? Commissioner Witosh, are you ready?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Duncan's comments. I have some additional concerns. Those comments actually would result in material changes to the as-built structure, lowering the roof, changing the roof material, changing the roof, again, roof line over the French doors, and the color and so forth. My concern is this project, this property is in a neighborhood, yes. It's historic, and I would like to see it maintain its eligibility for historic designation. It has been impacted by the remodel, including the remodel of 1973. 1973 remodel didn't really remove material, it added something. The little hook became enclosed. That actually did not detract from the whimsy of the house, the scale and so forth, the fact that it was sloped down from the main structure to the odd shape of the plan. So I don't think those changes impacted negatively the eligibility of this property. I think the roof material, the roof angles, especially this new eyebrow over the French doors, I think that materially alters this from a country cottage to a shed roof chic contemporary farm home. And I think that is an offense to the neighborhood, to the architectural style of the building, Moody Sisters, legacy, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Duncan and then some. I do think there is a problem with the plans. I think the plans need to be fixed so that structural plans, architectural plans before and after and so on and so forth are what they are for the record, for the next owners, for the next generation or whatever. And I do think there are some little tinkering with the historic structures report. Some things need to be added that were mentioned by Ms. Long. Those are my initial comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Bouton. Commissioner Knight.
Just briefly, I thought Commissioner Duncan spoke well for most of us, I think. I appreciated Mr. Babbitt's presentation, the effort that he went to. Obviously, he has affection for his home and for the neighborhood. I think the fact that the whole neighborhood is that way is very important. It seemed there was a point in time when the owners were maybe flexible on the roof changes. I don't know if that could ever be revisited. Feel bad for the owners not being able to do what they want with their property, but understand the other homeowners in the area as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Nye?
Yes, thank you. I too appreciate the presentations on all sides and very complete and informative, and helps us up here come to grips with this, which is difficult on many levels to respond to. There's a lot of technical issues that would just take so long to address. I too agree that the roof is, as we mentioned the first time it was before us, the roof is not appropriate. And neither are the raised roof lines. I will say that I am very sympathetic to folks who have a tiny house and need to make upgrades to make it livable, to have the right and safe egress and so forth. So I would like the applicants to be able to make some of these changes as long as they're considered appropriate to the style of the original house. I think there's a middle ground which can be accomplished, but it's going to take coordination of all the parties across the table who can be consulted on a appropriately altered Moody cottage. So I wish the homeowners well. I hope they can find a way to make the right changes. And I would hope that the end result is something that it fits better into the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Snow.
Yes, in many ways, this is a neighbor dispute, and it does go to many issues, the roof in particular, but I'm reminded of two old sayings. There's no accountant for taste, and the other one is things that stick out like a sore thumb. And I think here there's a little bit of both. One of the things that make the changes so apparent is the color. And I know my fellow commissioners know I really am not sympathetic with this white, stark white with the black trim. It's a real estate thing now that every house that's for sale, they do it to make it, as you said, shed roof chic. It's trying to change some, make it saleable. But it all started about 15 years ago, like in England. It's come over and it's popping up in neighborhoods where it's really inappropriate. And I think if you could change the color, the starkness, it would fit in. The one thing about the Moody sisters, they built houses that fit into their environment. They were actually cottages. Nature was part of it. You wanted the windows to look out. You wanted to not stand out like a sore thumb. You wanted to blend and you wanted to be part of something. It was cozy. These words that we had, they had some of the words we talked, whimsy, cozy. This doesn't look anything like what, whimsical or cozy, but it could be changed simply without having to, I feel sorry that if you to make people rebuild things and take out roofs so they're there, that's an expensive project. But if you could just make it blend so your neighbors aren't looking at the sore thumb, because it does stick out. And the roof, the raising of the roof, when you look at it, it was sort of balanced. Now it doesn't feel balanced. And I do agree about the windows. Yes, it was inappropriate to do it. And putting French doors, those big doors are gonna really dwarf it. They're gonna be out of proportion. But I think you could do a lot if you could blend it in more with the environment. It doesn't have to be blue or red, but just to fit into nature and to kind of honor the Moody sisters. And we look at things in their historic context, and that's so important to our board. So, showing something like this is going to kind of get us, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Can you blend it in? That's a lot less expensive than just to it can be optical. I have to say, the neighbor across I have an 1898 house across from me. They did it they kept the one facade, but they did the same thing like this, black roof, minimal black trim, but white, stark white, and it doesn't go with anything. But the one good thing they did was put up a fence so I don't have to stare at it all the time. And there's some way to blend. This doesn't. And I don't know what we do, but our comments are going to want the history to be honored. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Snow. Okay, I guess everyone has commented. I guess I'll just kind of wrap things up here. When we first heard this, 2021, I said back then, and most of us said here, that the roof was not acceptable. The metal roof does not meet what a Moody Sisters cottage is supposed to be. And it's unfortunate that we're 2-3 years later and, you know, our biggest concern is still our biggest concern. It's still there, that metal roof. And, you know, I agree with all the comments that it's not appropriate for a Moody Sisters house to have that look. It changes what a Moody Sisters house is supposed to be, a cottage. And it is a cottage. And, you know, I really feel for the property owners. I mean, I can't imagine going through almost 3 years of construction and being stopped. You started work and then you had to stop. But you know, historic structures are really important to save in this community. And we lost one Moody Sisters cottage recently. And if these changes go through as we look at it today, we basically are losing another one. It's, you know, so many changes to it that it won't be recognizable as the Moody Sisters. So I agree that, you know, when we first got this agenda, it said that they were going to change the roof to an asphalt roof, and it's even in our agenda that way. And I just hope, you know, I wanted the Montecito Planning Commission to let them know that we still believe that it should be an asphalt roof. And right there will change the character of what the house will look like. And it, as stated, it's not just going to be one solid, it should be a multicolor to make it look like a thatched roof is, you know, the idea that it should look like. I have really concerns about the raising of the roof. I mean, I go back and forth thinking, well, this is appropriate, it's not appropriate. I'm always concerns about fire safety and exit availability. But as we look at how the house looked, there is some small doors that are I believe they're still there. They haven't been changed yet, but the plan is to take them out and have this double wide door with the raised roof area. And I think Commissioner Duncan nailed it right in that, sure, you need a larger door to make it safer, but not that great big French door that's planned there. It's not appropriate, I don't believe, for the architecture of a Moody Sisters house. And so that would also mean we don't need that roof to be as high, raised up as high as it was to put in that big door. If you put in a smaller door, it should be fine. Colors key, as mentioned before, white and black is not appropriate. Muted colors, you just look at the history of Moody Sisters cottages. There's all kinds of different color variations you can do that are warmer. They should be warmer. And that also includes the carport shed, which is nearby. Even though that's not historic, the two together should be in mutual colors that will make it look compatible for the neighborhood. And everyone mentioned, mostly mentioned that, you know, we are looking at a historic district here of Moody Sisters cottages. And so, you know, it should be in condition with the other Moody Sisters cottages in that area, you know, the same type of roof and color coordination. So, you know, I feel for the property owners, but then a lot of this work was done without a permit. And, you know, it's unfortunate that's what happened, but, you know, we need to move forward. People should be able to live in their house. And I think that, you know, I hope the Montecito Planning Commission will, you know, move quickly on this, change the roof back to where it was before. I personally think the raising of the back really does affect the whole architecture of the Moody Sisters cottage. So I'd like to see that raised down, but definitely a door. And the other changes, I think they're fine. The windows that are proposed, they fit in with the character of the Moody Sisters cottage. So, I mean, these other changes that are on there, I think I'd be fine with keeping with those changes. So anyway, that is it for this agenda item. What we usually do in the past is I'll be writing a memo that will go to Montecito Planning Commission. So they will have our comments down. So it'll be at their next meeting that they'll know what we said today. But I want to thank everybody for coming today, for the speakers, everyone taking your time, been a long meeting for this one item, and I know not everyone's going to be happy. But we always try to have a compromise here for everybody. So thank you very much. And that's the end of this agenda item. Thank you.
I have a comment I specifically want to mention Mr. Babbitt's presentation, which was probably one of the best presentations I've ever seen on this commission. And I want to thank him for that. It was clear, it was detailed, it went smoothly and quickly. I have one other comment about lowering the eyebrow. I noticed that the door is 7 feet. There's a header on top of the door. The rafters sit on top of the header. There's a thing called flush framing. And all you need is the window frame, the door frame, put the rafter, put a header across that's the same thickness as the rafter, and flush frame the rafters, and you get no distance on top of that. It's one way to lower that roof, and I think I agree that that's important. I also would like to add that I don't think this property should lose its eligibility for historic designation, and I think that means that somehow the standards of the Secretary of the Interior should be upheld in the restoration or rehabilitation or preservation, whatever it's called.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Winter. Thank you. Let's have a 10-minute break before we go to our next agenda item. Advisory Commission meeting for March 11, 2024. We're back in session. We had item 9 here, HLAC discussion on incentives to encourage landmarking of historic structures.
Mr. Chair, I was going to recommend that we simply continue this to another date, considering our late hour and the fact that there's nothing that we have to do this by a given time.
Okay.
And the fact that that clock is wrong.
I know. Okay, so it is wrong. So, do you have a second to continue
A
this?
second.
Okay, so let's have a vote to continue this and we can adjourn the meeting. So let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Snow?
Aye.
Continue for next month's meeting?
I agree.
Ritash? Duncan?
Aye.
Aye.
Nye?
Nye says aye.
Malcolm?
Sure.
Kaufman Gray says aye. So we'll continue item number 9. So that concludes our meeting for March 11th, 2024. Our next meeting is April 8th, 2024. It's at 10 o'clock in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, 4th floor. See you all next month. Thank you for a great meeting.